All right. I got to tell you, I was listening to some of the lectures by Truman G. Madsen, and no, they're not the lectures that you find on YouTube about Joseph Smith. These actually are the lectures that came after the lectures on Joseph Smith that everyone hears on YouTube, that people requested that he make regarding the teachings of Joseph Smith, and then examples from his life that kind of iterate or exemplify what he's teaching. And what was really interesting, what stood out to me was there's a point where they're talking about authority, and he brings up about the last days and the vision of the church, and what would happen as we come into the millennial era. And he talks about how in the scriptures it mentions, in I believe in Isaiah and a couple other places.
And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. And he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem.
From Jerusalem shall come the word of the Lord, and from New Jerusalem the law. And people just assumed, oh, this is all the same, but it's actually specifying two specific different areas. And Joseph Smith did say, well, the New Jerusalem is going to be from America in Missouri, whereas the Old Jerusalem, obviously, that's where Jesus was. And so you have these two important centers, but one is the law of God, which is the Constitution, which it will be refined, obviously, and it shall spread throughout the whole rest of the world, while Old Jerusalem, where Christ actually was, that's where the church headquarters focus will take place, which is a really cool future to look forward to. But as I thought about how the law that will govern the entire world, that Jesus Christ shall govern the world through, is coming from America, coming from the New Jerusalem that will be built here. I thought about how this just adds on to the fact, this is like the capstone, I think, to everything the Book of Mormon talks about. If you are a Latter-day Saint who lives in America, not just North America generally, but in America, where we have the heritage of the Constitution, which the scriptures say was inspired of God by men that he raised up for that very purpose, then we have, and the Book of Mormon also talks about how it's important for us to root out among us the Gideon robbers, these evil designs that are trying to destroy the world, and we need to uphold the freedom of the people. And we have the example of Captain Moroni. This whole point about the New Jerusalem spreading forth the law by which the world shall be governed, and it being a constitutional government. That's what Truman G. Madsen said, and he's a very, very smart guy. I don't think he said that lightly, and I believe that's true.
You and I, have a book that speaks of a new Jerusalem. And we know from studying the context that it is to take its full-flowered fulfillment in the land of Joseph, which is this land, a land choice above all other lands and unknown, hidden from, in a way, for generations, the so-called Old World. But in saying all that, the book also says that the Old Jerusalem, the one that is in what we now call the Holy Land, will be regenerated and renewed. And there will therefore be two world capitals in the future millennium, one in the, quote, Old World and one in the New. Early, so early it is breathtaking, 1831. The church has hardly been in the world a year. Joseph Smith gave a revelation we now number 133, and that it's called the appendix, and then we also have a preface to the Doctrine and Covenants. And what does section 133 talk about? It specifically promises that when Christ descends at his second coming, every eye shall see and every tongue ultimately confess he is the Christ. Now, how can that be? How can there be two? You've heard the Isaianic phrase, and Isaiah was taught into the prophet Joseph Smith's mind and heart by Moroni as his personal tutor at great length. And the letters of Oliver Cowdery, written later to describe what Joseph taught him about Isaiah, are clarifying on this and expansive. Isaiah says that someday the word of the Lord shall go forth from Jerusalem, and the law from Zion. I suppose millions have concluded from reading that it's talking about the same place. Both the law and the word of the Lord shall go forth from Old Jerusalem. But Joseph Smith is teaching us that the law, which is to say something to do with constitutional government, will be generated and will fill the earth from this country, which is properly called Zion. And yes, the word of the Lord will come from the returned Messiah, the Christ, from the Old Jerusalem. Two world capitals, each with its own function. You must have heard all your lives that Joseph Smith said something about the Constitution hanging by a thread. Where is that? Where did he say that? Much of that is recollection. People who said, I heard Joseph say. Not minutes of a meeting where he said today. We have, for example, Eliza R. Snow, John Taylor, Heber C. Kimball, others in recollection. But there are 4 other sources that are contemporary, and they clarify again. They fine-tune what he really was saying. One version of it is conditional. If the Constitution is saved, it will be through this church. The other 3 seem to say that this form of government, which the prophet called a glorious standard, this Constitution, which cost, according to our own scriptures, the best blood of the 19th century, actually in that case the 18th, this Constitution, which is a canopy of guaranteeing certain basic rights in a republican form of government, will ultimately extend its influence worldwide. Other forms of government will eventually crumble. And in that sense, if I read him correctly, the Constitution will win by default. The only stable society that eventually will obtain, even in this glorious country of America, unless we repent, and there isn't a lot of evidence of that at the moment, will be afflicted. The only people that will be secure in both the spiritual and temporal senses, call it safety if you want, because Joseph did, will be in the stakes of Zion. Temporal as well as spiritual survival will depend upon peoples clustering who do continue to uphold the Constitution and who also honor, love, and serve the God of this land, who is Jesus Christ. But eventually, and especially in the millennium, world government will be literally based upon the Constitution.
There's a reason why the law by which the world shall be governed shall come here, and it shall be constitutional, because God inspired the Constitution. It's not perfect, and he will refine and make it better, but as Latter-day Saints who live in America, this is why we have this major responsibility upon our shoulders to be politically active and involved righteously, and not to be persuaded by the by the subtleties of the devil, by the flatteries of men, to support causes and things that are unrighteous. Because once we stop, as we know from the Book of Mormon, once we no longer serve the God of this land, it's over, and we get replaced. And we have a charge to serve the God of this land, who is Jesus Christ, in order for us to maintain our freedom. And we know that the whole world looks to America. They really do, to what we do. We are the maintainers of freedom for the entire world, and the whole world has tried to reflect our constitutional basis of government. So, as Latter-day Saints, we need to be conservative minded. I don't mean think of conservative politics and Charlie Kirk and all those guys. What I mean is we need to properly understand the doctrines and the principles of the gospel of Jesus Christ, and how they help us make proper decisions in when it comes to legislating, when it comes to politics, but also by the Spirit of God discern politicians and actors, the people in the political sphere, and what is taking place. Um, it's very abundantly clear by how evil the world has become. Satan is no longer hiding his cards. If you are misaligned by the wrong people, but you like certain candidates or certain individuals, you think they're much better than this other side that you dislike, but they and their party and the people that they surround themselves with support things that go very contrary to the gospel of Jesus Christ, that go very contrary to the teaching of the brethren. But we also need to make sure we don't uh, fantasize over candidates that we like, even if, let's say, we're not part of a particular party that supports this, and we think we're in a good place. We must still be careful and cautious and discern and make sure that the decisions that we make are not blind and they are led by the Spirit of God, and they help spread forth righteousness and instill righteousness among the people who will be God-fearing, who will keep His commandments, and not just, how do I want to put this? Who will abide by His law. So think about that. This is meant to be a very brief video. I didn't want it to be too long, but I just wanted to get that out there, get that off my shoulders, and share that with you. This is really important for Latter-day Saints to be actively involved, to discern, and to care about what happens politically in our nation, because this is the land of the Nephites, this is the land of the Book of Mormon, this is the land of the Constitution, the land by which the Lord will govern the entire world in the millennial reign. So do our best to prepare for Christ's coming again by keeping our nation on the right path. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.